Welcome back to the channel. If you've found your way here today, trust that this message carries weight for your situation. The cards have spoken, and what they reveal is nothing short of a spiritual earthquake, one that's currently shaking the very foundation of your person's world. What they once projected onto you, what they dismissed as your overreaction or your sensitivity, has now become their living reality. The universe, in its perfect symmetry, has turned the mirror around. And what they see staring back at them is the truth they've been running from. We have 8 cards on the table today, each one a chapter in this unfolding story. From the paralyzing fear that keeps them frozen to the inevitable moment when masks finally fall away. This reading speaks to those of you who have loved deeply, who have been cast aside or made to feel like you were too much, only to watch from a distance as the one who hurt you now faces their own reckoning. The energy is shifting. Can you feel it? Because they certainly can. Let's begin where their heart currently lives, in the shadow of the first card. Your person is standing at the edge of a precipice, looking down at the vast space between where you stand and where they are. The distance feels insurmountable, not because it's truly that far, but because they are terrified of what happens if they try to cross it and fail. Every time they consider reaching out, their mind floods with scenarios of your response. What if you don't answer? What if you've moved on? What if the door they slammed shut has been locked from the inside, and they no longer have the key? This fear didn't appear overnight. It grew slowly, like vines wrapping around their heart, tightening each time they thought of you and chose silence instead. They remember the last time they spoke to you, the words they used, the tone they took, the way they made you feel small when you were only trying to love them. That memory haunts them now. They replay it when they lie awake at 3 in the morning, wondering if that was the moment they lost you forever. But here's what the cards reveal that they may not even admit to themselves: this fear of rejection is actually love in disguise. If they didn't care, if you were truly forgotten, there would be no fear. The anxiety they feel when they hover over your name in their phone, the way their chest tightens when they see something that reminds them of you, that's the body speaking truth that the mind tries to suppress. They worry you might say no. They worry you've healed past the point of wanting them back. Yet love, in its persistent and often inconvenient way, keeps pushing them toward the question anyway. Love makes them ask anyway. Even when pride screams no. Even when logic points out all the reasons why you shouldn't forgive them. Something deeper than their fear is beginning to take the wheel, and that something is the recognition that you were never ordinary. You were never someone they could replace or forget. You were the one who saw through their defenses and loved them anyway. And losing that has created a hole in their life that nothing else can fill. Something deep inside them changed. The cards don't lie about this transformation. It's not surface level, not performative, not the kind of change they announce to the world for validation. This is a quiet heart revolution, happening in the chambers of their soul where no one else can see. They may not even have words for it yet. They only know that the person they were when they hurt you no longer makes sense to them. That version of themselves feels like a stranger wearing their face. This shift began when the consequences of their choices started arriving. Perhaps they found themselves in a situation that mirrored exactly what they put you through. Maybe they finally experienced what it means to give your heart to someone who treats it carelessly. Or perhaps the emptiness of their life without you became too loud to ignore, drowning out all the distractions they used to keep themselves numb. Whatever the catalyst, the result is the same: they are not who they were. A quiet heart revolution begins. They're questioning beliefs they held for years about love, about vulnerability, about what they deserve and what they're capable of giving. They're noticing patterns in their relationships that they never saw before, recognizing how they sabotage connection when it gets too real, too deep, too much like what they shared with you. This is uncomfortable work. It's the kind of growth that happens in isolation, in the dark night of the soul, when all the noise finally stops and they're left alone with their truth. You may not see evidence of this shift yet. They may still be silent, still appear unchanged to the outside world. But energetically, something has moved. The foundation has cracked, and light is pouring into places that have been sealed shut for years. They're beginning to understand that love isn't about winning or losing, about maintaining power or protecting themselves from hurt. Love is the risk anyway. Love is choosing someone even when you know they could break your heart. And they're starting to realize they failed at this with you, not because they didn't love you, but because they were too afraid of what that love would require of them. You were always their guiding beacon. From the moment your paths crossed, you carried a luminosity that both attracted and intimidated them. Your light wasn't loud or demanding. It was steady, warm, unwavering, the kind of presence that made them feel seen in ways they never had before. You illuminated parts of themselves they didn't know existed, and yes, parts they wished stayed hidden. That's what truth does. It reveals. They were drawn to you like a moth to flame, even as part of them feared getting too close to something so pure. Your energy was healing, grounding, transformative. When they were with you, they felt capable of being better than their worst impulses. You inspired a version of themselves they wanted to become but didn't know how to sustain. And when they lost you, when they pushed you away with their inconsistency, their fear, their inability to receive what you were offering, that light didn't disappear from their memory. If anything, it grew brighter in absence, becoming the standard against which they now measure everything else. Never dim your light. Never. The cards emphasize this with urgent clarity. Whatever they did to make you doubt yourself, whatever words they used to suggest you were too intense, too emotional, too much, they were wrong. Your light was never the problem. Their inability to stand in it was. And now, watching from whatever distance separates you, they see your radiance more clearly than ever. Perhaps you've been posting more on social media, sharing your growth, your joy, your undeniable glow-up. Or maybe they've heard through mutual connections that you're thriving, that you've stepped into a power they always knew you had. This visibility of your light is part of what's driving their transformation. They're seeing what life looks like when you don't need them to validate your worth. They're witnessing the miracle of someone who loved unconditionally finally turning that love back onto themselves. And it's breaking their heart open in the best possible way. Your independence, your refusal to wait in the shadows for their return, your commitment to your own healing, these are the very things making them realize what they threw away. Don't you dare shrink for anyone. Your light is your birthright, and it's doing exactly what it was meant to do, guiding lost souls home, even when they took the long way to find you. Choosing others over you cost everything. This isn't hyperbole. This is the mathematical equation of their current suffering, the sum of all their miscalculations. Whether it was another person, a lifestyle, their career, their fear of commitment, or simply their ego, they placed something above you, and in doing so, they lost the only thing that truly mattered. They know it was wrong. This knowing has become a constant companion, whispering in their ear during moments of happiness that feel hollow, laughing at their attempts to find satisfaction in substitutes that pale in comparison. They see now that the grass they thought was greener was just painted concrete. They traded gold for glitter, depth for distraction, a soul connection for something that required less of them. And the bill has come due. The magnitude of this mistake reveals itself in layers. At first, it was just missing you, the comfort of your presence, the way you understood them without explanation. Then it became recognizing how you made them better, how your belief in them gave them courage they didn't know they had. Now, in the deepest layer of this realization, they understand that you represented a crossroads in their life. You were the path not taken, the choice that would have led to their highest evolution. And they chose the easier road, the one that required less vulnerability, less growth, less facing of their own shadows. What breaks them most is the awareness that you knew. You saw the choice they were making even when they couldn't. You felt them pulling away, investing elsewhere, hedging their bets. You probably tried to warn them, or perhaps you simply watched with heartbreaking clarity as they dismantled what you built together. Your dignity in that moment, whether you fought for them or let them go with grace, has become part of their torment. They can't claim ignorance. They can't pretend they didn't know what they were risking. They made a conscious choice to prioritize something else, and now that something else has crumbled while you have risen. This is the karma they face. Not punishment from the universe, but the natural consequence of undervaluing a rare and precious gift. They're learning that some opportunities don't circle back. Some doors, once closed, stay that way. And the weight of that lesson is crushing them into someone new, someone who will never again make the mistake of choosing fear over love. Something is moving between you both. Can you feel it yet? If you've been attuned to this connection, you've probably noticed it, the way their name comes up more frequently, the sudden appearance of signs and synchronicities, the dreams that feel less like imagination and more like visitation. The veil is thinning. The distance, while still physical, is becoming less substantial energetically. This shift isn't accidental. It's the result of both your healing work and theirs. When two souls are truly connected, growth on one end creates ripple effects on the other. Your decision to stop chasing, to reclaim your power, to become the main character in your own story, this sent shockwaves through their consciousness. They felt it. Maybe they couldn't name it, but they sensed the moment you truly let go. And that release, paradoxically, is what's allowing them to move toward you now. The energy between you is becoming magnetic again, but different than before. Previously, there was a push-pull dynamic, you reaching, them retreating, the imbalance that created friction and pain. Now the polarity is shifting. You're grounded in your own center, no longer orbiting them. And this stability is actually more attractive than your previous pursuit ever was. They feel the difference. Where once they felt pressure, now they feel invitation. Where once they sensed need, now they recognize wholeness. And wholeness is irresistible. Can you feel it yet? The cards suggest you might be experiencing this as restlessness, as a sense that something is about to happen without knowing what. You might find yourself thinking of them at odd moments, not with the ache of missing, but with a curious neutrality that somehow feels more significant than emotion. Or perhaps you've had moments of absolute certainty about their feelings, knowledge that arrived without evidence, intuition that bypassed logic. Trust these impressions. The energetic bridge is being rebuilt, plank by plank, in the space between your separate but connected healing. Walls down. Masks completely off. Two hearts meeting honestly now. This is the future the cards are pointing toward, the inevitable destination of all this transformation. But it's important to understand what this requires: the death of performance, the end of strategic communication, the courage to be seen fully. Your person is approaching a moment of profound vulnerability. They're tired of the games, exhausted by the pretense that they don't care, worn down by the energy it takes to maintain distance when every part of them wants to close the gap. The masks they've worn, of indifference, of strength, of having moved on, are cracking beyond repair. And beneath them is the truth they've been hiding even from themselves: they never stopped loving you. Not for a day, not for an hour. They just didn't know how to hold something so big without breaking. When these masks fall away completely, what emerges will be raw, unfiltered, possibly messy. Real reconciliation isn't cinematic. It's two people acknowledging the ways they failed each other and themselves. It's tears and trembling voices and the terrifying risk of saying, "I still want you," without knowing if the answer will be reciprocated. The cards show this heart-to-heart approaching. It may come as a letter that took weeks to write. A phone call made in a moment of courage that overrides fear. Or perhaps the universe will orchestrate a meeting that feels accidental but is divinely timed. Two hearts meeting honestly now. This honesty includes the full story, the beautiful and the broken. They need to tell you about their regret, their growth, their recognition of what you were to them. And you, if you choose to receive them, will need to speak your truth too. About the pain they caused, the trust they shattered, the parts of yourself you had to reclaim when they walked away. This conversation won't be easy, but it will be real. And real is what this connection has always needed. The walls are coming down whether they want them to or not. The universe is ensuring that pretense is no longer an option. What remains to be seen is whether both hearts are ready to meet in this cleared space, or if one still needs more time to heal. Either way, the authenticity is coming. And authenticity, while sometimes uncomfortable, is always the precursor to either true reunion or true closure. Both are gifts. Done pretending they do not care. They care more than shown. This card echoes the previous but carries its own specific frequency, the frequency of exhaustion. Your person has reached the limit of their capacity for deception. The performance of moving on, of being fine, of having replaced you with someone or something else, it has taken too much energy and yielded too little relief. They care more than shown. In fact, they care more than they've ever allowed themselves to admit, even in private. The depth of their feeling for you has been their most closely guarded secret, locked away because acknowledging it meant facing what they lost. But secrets have weight, and this one has become too heavy to carry. They're beginning to understand that confessing their care, risking your rejection, is actually less frightening than continuing to live this lie. The mask is falling in stages. First, it slipped with friends who noticed their mood change when your name was mentioned. Then it cracked in moments of solitude when they stopped distracting themselves and felt the full force of their longing. Now it's shattering in ways they can't control, tears that come unexpectedly, dreams that leave them shaken, the inability to listen to certain songs or visit certain places without being overwhelmed by your memory. They're done pretending, but that doesn't mean they've figured out what to do instead. The space between stopping the performance and starting the conversation is where they currently live. It's an uncomfortable limbo, filled with second-guessing and rehearsing speeches they'll probably never deliver exactly as planned. But the important thing is the pretense is over. The energy they were using to convince themselves and others that they were over you is now available for something real. And something real is coming. When they finally drop this mask with you directly, it may not be graceful. They might stumble over their words, say too much or too little, cry or laugh nervously or do all three simultaneously. Receive it with compassion if you can. This clumsy honesty is the most authentic version of themselves you've ever seen. The mask was always about protection, protection from vulnerability, from accountability, from the overwhelming power of what they feel for you. Now that protection is gone. What remains is the truth, exposed and trembling, asking only to be witnessed. What broke becomes the strongest foundation. This is the promise at the end of this story, the redemption arc that makes all the pain purposeful. New beginnings are always available, not as a return to what was, but as a creation of what could be, informed by everything that's been learned. If you choose to rebuild with this person, understand that you're not repairing the old relationship. That version died for good reason. You're building something new on the ashes, using the wisdom of your separate journeys as mortar. The cracks that formed during your separation, if properly acknowledged and integrated, become the strongest parts of the new structure. You both know now what you didn't know then, about your own patterns, about what you truly need, about the cost of taking love for granted. New beginnings are always available. This is true regardless of whether you reunite with this specific person or not. The work you've done, the light you've reclaimed, the strength you've discovered in your own company, none of this is wasted. You've become someone who knows their worth, who won't settle for breadcrumbs, who understands that love should add to your life rather than diminish it. This version of you is capable of a caliber of relationship that the old you couldn't have sustained. For those of you who do find your way back to each other, the cards paint a picture of something rare. A love that has been tested and chosen anyway. A connection that survived betrayal, silence, growth apart, and still found its way home. This isn't the naive love of newness. This is love that knows the cost and pays it willingly. Love that has seen the worst and believes in the best anyway. Your person is currently experiencing the mental anguish and emotional collapse that once was yours to bear alone. They're in their own third-party situation now, not necessarily romantic, but certainly karmic. A situation designed by the universe to teach them what you already learned through their absence. How to sit with discomfort. How to long for someone who seems just out of reach. How to recognize, finally and fully, what they destroyed through carelessness. This is not revenge. This is balance. This is the scales righting themselves so that when you meet again, you'll meet as equals. Two souls who have both known the dark night, who have both been humbled by loss, who are both ready, truly ready, to do love differently. The fear of rejection still whispers, but love is speaking louder. The shift has happened, and there's no going back. Your light continues to guide them home. The mistake has been acknowledged and integrated. The energy moves between you like breath, like tide, like the inevitable return of spring after winter. The mask has fallen. The heart-to-heart approaches. And somewhere, in the space between what was and what will be, a new beginning waits, patient, possible, and more beautiful than either of you could have imagined when the first card was drawn. Trust the process. Trust the timing. Trust that everything unfolding now is preparing you for exactly what your soul needs. The cards have spoken. The rest is up to you.